So Monday, the football team had an off day. They're going to resume fall practice Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. However, by the time practice is over, Lincoln Riley's 2023 recruiting class could have added another addition. Plus, it's never too soon to take a look at the USC men's hoop basketball team. That's what's coming up next on Locked On USC.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Marc Culkin, and thanks for making Locked On USC your first listen every day, whether you're watching on YouTube or wherever you download your podcast. We are free, and we appreciate you coming along for the ride and helping the show grow. If you are watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It means a lot, more than you know. And go ahead and throw your feedback up there also. Let me know what you like, what you don't. If you've got any questions, that's the place to throw them. All right, so as I mentioned, the team had Monday off from fall camp. All the rigors of getting hit and hitting. They had a team scrimmage on Sunday, so having that day off on Monday probably felt really good. So again, instead of hitting each other, they had a different type of game day with the team building and camaraderie that goes along with it. The whole team went over to Dave & Buster's and spent some time playing some video games and eating and just hanging out together, having a good time. And this is probably the perfect time for that type of bonding, I guess. Right after the scrimmage, give the team a day off. And it also kind of comes on the heels of the way you might remember on the last episode, I talked about how Lincoln Riley likes to challenge his guys at the end of practice. So this comes right on the heels of that feel-good story of, Tuli Pelotu becoming a punt returner. These types of little steps working together is really a part of the growth process for this team. So, when you hear about, the athletes and how they talk about the brotherhood, this is what they're referencing. It's not just about the blood and the sweat that they leave on the field. It's these types of things that happen behind the scenes, away from the fans, away from the media. Obviously the players love to use social media and show everybody what they're doing. But these types of, again, brotherhood, bonding type of scenarios, they are just as important to chemistry and team building than what goes on the practice field, especially when you consider how new this team is to each other. It's been mentioned multiple times. It's the most unique roster college football's ever seen, with what was it, 36 transfers. Plus you got the recruiting class that came in, the new coaching staff. This is how you get to find out who you really are when the pads come off. Obviously there's not a lot to report back on from the scrimmage. Everyone right now is being really tight-lipped. A lot of our sources, a lot of my sources, they're usually willing to give up information, but Lincoln Riley is the new sheriff in town, and he wants to keep everything tight-lipped, right? He wants to keep everything close to the vest. So I was able to wrestle away, and I'm going to quote, "The offense dominated the day," end quote. Now, the person who gave me that little piece of information, they might be biased, but you're going to take what you get at this point, right? So that's what you get from the team scrimmage that they had on Sunday. The offense apparently had the better of the day, which is interesting because the last time we spoke with Lincoln Riley came after Friday's practice, and he mentioned that at the end of the first week, he thought the defense had the better of the two groups after 1 week. So who knows? I guess fair and balanced is the message that you're going to get right now. Defense one day, offense the next. So again, we'll find out. We'll be back at practice. If you're watching this Tuesday morning or listening with your first listen, I will be out there for USC's practice Tuesday morning. They're set for 9 a.m. And we'll be able to find out, how much of a toll that scrimmage had, mainly from the injury perspective, because what we get to see from the press, who's coming and who's going to practice, basically who's suited up, partially or all the way. So we'll know who's practicing and who's kind of spending a little time on rehab island. And if that scrimmage was physical and it did pay the price, so to speak, that's going to be kind of significant, because this will be the second week of fall camp, and this is where you really like to get as physical as you can without, obviously, with as minimal amount of injuries as possible. It's football. You're going to get some dings, bumps, and bruises, but you don't want any season-ending type of injuries that you're hearing from around the country. I know Texas and Notre Dame have both lost some players they were counting on to season-ending injuries. So you just knock on wood and hope that USC doesn't suffer the same fate during this next week of practices, because starting the following week, classes start and they go into more of a game week routine where you're focused on installing your own offense and defense, as well as the opposition, what they're going to be doing. So if the team got too banged up through the scrimmage, how will that affect this last week of fall camp? Will Lincoln have to pull back sooner than he wanted to, as far as the physicality? As I mentioned, the team will practice this week. They'll have another practice on Saturday. They'll be off Sunday, and then Monday they start classes August 22nd. So there you go. Once they start classes, they'll start their game week routine. And there you go. You're into the season now. Once classes started, you'll be 2 weeks away from kickoff. Practice starts at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, and as I did talk about this at the very top of the show, that there's a chance, pardon me, that Lincoln Riley might be adding to the 2023 recruiting class. Alani Noah, interior offensive lineman from Grant High School in Sacramento, is set his announcement for 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and you'll be able to watch that live streaming on the internet, I believe, through 24/7. So if he does join the USC recruiting class, he'll be joining his other large friends who are already there. Micah Banuelos, 4-star offensive lineman, as well as Amos Talalele, the other interior offensive lineman. So that would be 3 solid dudes adding to this class, and that's an emphasis that USC fans will love to hear, that offensive line being addressed, and with big, strong guys. And that's not the only bit of recruiting information. USC right now feels really solid with Noah making his commitment. I'm recording this Monday night, tomorrow at some point. So if and when he does make that announcement at 11 and USC's practice is still going on, we'll see if there's any type of visceral reaction from the practice, with a loud reaction from the team. Will Gavin Morris or anybody from USC jump on social media and kind of remind the competition who won the Alani Noah sweepstakes. We're looking at you, Oregon. Yeah, so just a little competitive dig there for the Pac-12 as we know it. As everyone knows, USC will be joining the Big Ten in 2024. So now, according to the On3 network, USC has their ranking right now before Noah joins the class. They have the number 12 nationally ranked class. So we'll see where they jump if and when he decides to become a Trojan. That's all 6'4", 320 pounds of Alani Noah. And you can bet that USC thinks he's worth more than the 3-star ranking that the services are giving him. And if you don't believe me and you want to keep betting, head on over to betonline.net because they're your fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. You can find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews, news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. Head on over to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so the first preseason AP poll was released Monday morning, and USC checked in at number 14. And I think that's a completely fair starting point for this team, considering how they finished last year, 4-8, and it wasn't a pretty 4-8. And then you add in, all the offseason coaching changes. Yeah, you brought in a top-tier head coach in Lincoln Riley, and you did turn over the roster significantly. You mentioned that in the previous segment. Giving USC the benefit of the doubt, being the 14th ranked team, how do you look at the poll? Is USC the number 14 team to start the season, or are the writers saying USC will be the 14th best team at the end of the season? That's really, the question about how the polls work. How are they perceived? Well, let's come at it from the perspective that USC is the number 14 ranked team to start the season because of their potential, because of Lincoln Riley as their new head coach, because of Caleb Williams as the quarterback, because of Jordan Addison joining the roster at wide receiver, because they have one of the best returning offensive lines in all of college football. You factor all that in, and hey, you know what? Maybe USC is the 14th best team in the country. You don't like to see these rankings come out this soon. You'd prefer to see them come out after maybe the second or third game of the season, but it is what it is. This is part of the system, and it gives us something to talk about as well. So there were two other teams from the Conference of Champions who joined USC in the preseason poll. Utah was the highest ranked at number 7, and Oregon pops in at number 11. And so that's it. You get 3 teams from the Pac-12. That's it. So again, it's interesting that considering how, the perception of the conference and how down it is, to have USC chime in at 14 with Utah and Oregon 7 and 11 respectively. Okay. We'll see how long that plays out, because the Ducks are going to get, in my opinion, destroyed when they play Georgia to open the season. And just, look, they've had just as much change as USC, the new coaching staff over there. And Dan Lanning, as young and as energetic as he might be, and people might say he's got a really bright future. He's never been a head coach. This is his first rodeo in charge. So we'll see how he handles taking on the national champion right out of the chute. Tough going. Utah, they start their season on the road in Gainesville against an unranked Florida Gator team. Is there, what's the perception of Utah going to be if they do win? Do they get the benefit of beating an SEC team on the road, albeit unranked? Or, if they happen to lose, how far do they fall in the polls? And we know that USC at number 14 opens up against Rice. So, who's going to be 1-0 and who's going to be 0-1 at the end of week 1? If let's assume that Utah wins to open their season against Florida, and USC does what everyone hopes and anticipates. That sets up a really nice showdown for a couple of 6-0 teams in Salt Lake City come week 6 or week 7, I guess, if they're both 6-0. What will their rankings be based on where they're starting and the schedule and who they're playing? How high can USC get by the time they travel to Salt Lake City? Will that be a couple of top 5 teams? Will ESPN be there for game day? Will Fox be there? Who won't be there? I know I'm going to be there. So, and if you are a fan of USC who wants to travel, I suggest you look into buying your tickets now. Rice-Eccles Stadium isn't the biggest of stadiums. I think they hold somewhere between 57,000 and 60,000, and that place can be pretty raucous. So, hey, jump on now. Plan your trip. It's never too soon. So, I think that number 14 is probably the right spot, and it keeps USC, right in the spotlight. All they have to do is just win, and, they're going to get enough latitude from the media, from the press, even if some of those wins over the first few weeks of the season aren't as pretty as they should be. USC's opening line against Rice, I think you can check this out over there at betonline.net, is -35. Then they travel to Stanford. Let's say they struggle and win on the road at Stanford, and then come home and struggle against a pretty good Fresno State team. Are you going to hold that against Lincoln Riley at USC as long as they're winning? What's the injury factor look like? Those are all the things you got to take into consideration. So we'll see how that plays out. Again, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, forecasting things. But again, the first preseason AP poll came out. USC checks in at number 14. All right. So, recruiting note, the Trojans could be receiving, USC football isn't the only program that's getting some recruiting information. I've been told that USC is possibly going to be having a commitment soon from a 5-star player at a significant position of need, point guard. And if you're wondering, it's going to come down between USC and either Cincinnati and Michigan, and the vibe right now is really leaning heavily towards USC. The player in question, 5-star point guard Isaiah Collier. Man, if Andy Enfield can pull this, huge win. And I know UCLA wants this guy pretty bad as well. So I know if you've been following USC basketball, having a point guard has been a true point guard has been a point of contention. There's been some talented players who can facilitate and bring the ball up court, but never that true point guard mentality guy. I think Isaiah Collier fits that mold perfectly, and it would be a huge, huge addition for Andy Enfield and his 2023 class. Also, recruiting wise for basketball, there's talk about Bronny James, yes, LeBron's kid, playing for USC for at least one season. I'm of the opinion that I think this is just part of the whole marketing campaign. I don't think he'll play college ball. I could be wrong. I think he's going straight to the NBA. He said, his dad may no, he's mentioned it. He wants to play with his kid, and LeBron doesn't have that many years left. So, if a team is going to take a chance on bringing LeBron in and paying his salary, you want to get as much productivity out of him as you can. And if all that means is you're going to get him and his kid playing, I don't know if if a championship NBA team is willing to do that. Is LeBron willing to subjugate his game for the betterment of the team? And as far as I'm concerned, I could take Bronny James coming to USC or not. That's just my own personal opinion. Nothing against the young man. Tremendous basketball player. I'm just not a LeBron James fan. So there you go. We'll see. But again, some recruiting news for USC basketball fans. But there's also the Pac-12 released their conference schedule, and USC also has their non-conference schedule in place. We're going to go over that here in this segment as well. So when you look at the Trojans, they're set to place a potential 6 teams in their 11-game non-conference schedule. And those 6 teams actually played in the 2022 NCAA tournament. So that, on the surface, that's like, hey, all right, not bad. But when you look at the schedule, there is a nice mix. But overall, it's kind of soft in my opinion. And that's not a bad thing. When you consider, that the only Mobley on the roster this year is Coach Eric. Both Evan and Isaiah are on the Cleveland Cavaliers roster. So while Coach Mobley is a valuable piece to the team's puzzle, Evan and Isaiah will definitely be missed. And this is going to be a different looking team. So I don't mind having this type of out of conference schedule that USC is going to play, and we're going to go over that here in just a second. But USC is for all those people who think USC is strictly a football school, keep this in mind. USC, they tied their school record for wins last season with 26 wins. They finished 26-8 overall. Yes, they did check out of the NCAA tournament sooner than they wanted to. But they have 73 total wins during the past 3 seasons, which means they trail only Kansas and Baylor. Kansas has 83, and Baylor has 81. So those are 2 NCAA champions. And of the Power 5 teams, USC checks in with the 3rd most wins behind those 2. It's not bad. So I'm not going to go John Calipari and tell Lincoln Riley that USC is a basketball school now. But USC is dribbling with the big boys when it comes to winning on the court, and that includes supplying players to the NBA draft. Where I mentioned the Mobley brothers. And, if you want to go back before that, you got Onyeka Okongwu, 1st-round draft pick. USC has been doing a really good job. In fact, a much better job than that school across the city that we call UCLA. And also, since we're talking about, I mentioned Kentucky, and not wanting to put Andy Enfield in a negative light, or have Lincoln Riley staring daggers at them. Did you know that USC is undefeated against Kentucky in basketball? It's true. Go look it up. True story. So as far as the Trojans out of conference schedule basketball wise, they're going to open with 4 games at home, starting with Florida Gulf Coast. Florida Gulf Coast finished their season last year 22-12. As everyone should know, that's where Andy Enfield got his head coaching career started. And then after that, USC is going to host Alabama State. This is where it gets a little soft. They were 9-21 last year. That game will take place at Galen Center November 10th. Then USC will host Vermont from the American East Conference. They played in the NCAA tournament as a qualifier, winning the conference. They were 28-6. And then they will close out that 4-game homestand with Mount St. Mary's. They were 14-16 last year. So you can see, when you look at the schedules, 2 winning teams, a couple of losing teams. Then USC is going to travel and play in the Battle for Atlantis. That tournament has BYU. They finished 24-11 last year. Then the Trojans are going to face either Tennessee, another 28-17 in 21-22 this season, or Butler. They finished 14-19 last season. That game will take place on Thanksgiving Day or evening, depending on how the schedule shakes out. The Trojans' final game of that holiday tournament will be on the 25th. And they're going to play either defending champion Kansas, who finished 34-6, Wisconsin, who was also part of the tournament. They were 25-8, also an NCAA tournament qualifier. Dayton, 24-11, also an NCAA tournament qualifier, or North Carolina State, who finished 11-21. Excuse me. So, not bad. Again, that tournament definitely has some tough games, but before then, I would say USC is going to have a nice build-up go before they get to the Bahamas. Sprinkled in between those out-of-conference games, USC will also be traveling to Berkeley to play the Bears for their first Pac-12 team conference game. And then they're going to host Oregon State December 4th at Galen Center, against the Beavers. USC has 3 more out-of-conference games before the conference season kicks into full gear. That will be with Cal State Fullerton. They were 21-11 in the NCAA qualifier. Long Beach State, 20-13. And then USC will also take on Auburn and at the Galen Center, mind you, and Colorado State in Phoenix for the Jerry Colangelo Classic. So how far will Andy Enfield's team be able to go in 2022 and 23? They're going to be led by Drew Peterson and Boogie Ellis. This is going to be a really young, albeit talented team. You've got 2 seasoned vets in those guys, and then a bunch of freshmen and sophomores, and a couple of juniors. Look, we're going to dive much deeper into the basketball team as we get closer to their season, and I believe they start team practices, I think it was September 26th. So we're going to be back at it with the football team practice tomorrow with another episode. I will have your practice report. Until then, you know what to do, everyone. Fight on, and don't forget to make Locked On USC your first listen. And then when you're done here, head on over to wearesc.com. We've got some big VIP recruiting information that I can't talk about. Plus, we've got a really good Inside the Trojan Huddle podcast that you're going to check out. So head on over, and we'll see you back on Locked On USC tomorrow.